Good. So this is just going to be an objective look at SargonofAkkads' chances of getting elected in the upcoming European elections. Now, it's no secret that I'm not a fan of Brexit, and the reasons for that might become clear as we move on. Not a great fan of the EU either, by the way, but anyway, like I was saying, this is just an analysis of the numbers of Carl Benjamin's chances of getting elected as an MEP. Now, he was recently boasting that he had 1 million subscribers at a UKIP press conference, and so why should he care what the mainstream media said about him? And it's true enough that he's got the best part of 1 million subscribers. Cool. So we'll use that as the first benchmark, 1 million subscribers. But realistically, only about 10% of those are actually going to be in the UK. It's just using myself as a benchmark here. About 10% of my subscribers are in the UK. So, what is 100,000 voters worth? I mean, let's just be the most generous we can and say that all of those people are going to do exactly what Sargon tells them, and they're going to just go and vote for UKIP. This is the best case scenario. So we need to take a look at the previous European elections to give us a sort of benchmark for all of this. Now, in the previous EU elections, UKIP, the party which Sargon is standing for, absolutely cleaned up. They got about 25% of the vote, 25% of the MEPs, and 4.5-ish million votes, which means that the total number of votes cast across the whole UK was about 16 million votes. 16, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total votes. Good. So even at this point, we can see that if all of Sargon's subscribers were actually in the UK and they all voted for UKIP, that would be worth about 6% of the vote, which is still nowhere near enough to actually be influential, right? So the best case scenario would be, it's actually 6%, but whatever, 5%. Realistically, with 10% of his subscribers actually being in the UK, you're probably looking at 0.5%. And even more realistic still, you're probably looking at somewhere between a factor of 5 and 10 down on that, again, for people who will be motivated enough to go out and vote because of one of his videos. So in terms of likely impact, you're looking at about 5 parts in 1,000 is going to be his impact on this election, which when you realise that typically the margin of error of the vote is about 3% or something, this is operationally insignificant. It's actually quite funny that on one of his recent interviews, he was saying that, well, the polls didn't get it right for Trump and for Brexit, which is not actually really true. Both of those were predicted within the margin of error. And a UKIP is currently within the margin of error of 0 votes. So I don't think claiming that they didn't get it correct for Brexit, where it was a sort of 50-50 down the middle vote, means that someone who is polling at a couple of percent in the polls is actually going to start winning seats. Anyway, this is the sort of levels of delusion here. Anyway, let's take a look at the European elections in detail. So it's a proportional representation system, so it's 16 million votes over the whole country, and it's split into about 10 regions, so it's about 1.6 million votes per region. And this is the region that Sargon's in, which has about 6 MEPs returned, and it's proportional representation for them. So we can actually take a look at the last election result, and UKIP got about 500,000 votes in this region, which got them 2 MEPs, Conservatives got 2, again, with about 0.2 million votes per MEP. And this is basically the cut-off line, is about 160,000, which... so this Green MEP got in with 166,000. This one didn't, with about 160,000. So that's the goal that Sargon needs to get to. He needs to get to 160,000 in southwest UK region. Now, of course, let's assume this is all correct, that he's got 100,000 in the UK. That means that in the southwest, he's going to actually have about 10,000 subscribers. Okay, actually, okay, that's pretty reasonable. Apart from that means that he's at about the 5% of where he needs to get to just to cross the threshold of being electable. That's not he's getting 5% of the vote. He's at 5. He's got to get 95% more votes to become electable. Now, how is he actually doing at that? Well, if you actually take a look at his canvassing, you'll see that typically, I don't know, 100 or so people turn up, most of them protesters, to throw kippers at him and whatnot, so he can say how terrible it is to be Sargon. But, well, I mean, you just take a look at the numbers on these. If all of these people, right, 100,000, all of those people were actually in exactly his region, he would still only be about halfway to being electable. In reality, those people are spread over the whole world, not just in southwest England. So you can sort of see that this is, it's farcical. And the reason it's come to this, I mean, you could have done these numbers well before the election and worked out that this is just a really stupid thing to do. That if the UKIP were a sensible party with sensible policies and all that sort of thing, then, yeah, maybe this would have some appeal. But what does Sargon actually bring to their campaign? The answer is operationally almost nothing. I mean, at best, he's worth about 0.5% on this sort of protest vote thing. And this all goes back to the reason why he sort of split off from these folks. This whole idea of we're just triggering the normies with our Pepe memes and all that sort of thing, or are speculating about who or who we wouldn't rape. This does not play well with normies, who are the 16 million people whose votes you're trying to get. You don't need to be an inspired genius to work this out. And the defences that he's had for his comments towards Jess Phillips, they've been all over the place. I mean, he's basically gone through every excuse in the book that he was just being a dick because she was being a bitch. And first of all, at his press conference, he said that she was being horrible, so he was horrible back to her. Well, okay, and how exactly does that qualify you to be an MP, an MEP? And then after that, he sort of said that he was just joking and that he's a free speech activist. Like, that's what people really want their free speech for, is that this is not something that people view as an important free speech issue about speculating who and who you wouldn't rape. And I mean, this just goes back to the sheer autistic level of understanding of language of some of these folks. Language as normal people use it is approximately 30% the actual words you use. It's about 30% the inflection that you put on those words, and it's about 30% your facial expressions and body language and all that sort of thing. Yeah, nice example. A guy goes up to someone and says, "I'm going to kill you." This can be reasonably interpreted as a death threat. Guy goes and says exactly the same thing to his kid. It's understood that this is just a hyperbole. But normally you don't speculate about not raping people for no apparent reason. Just like mafia people don't go and speculate about whose business they wouldn't burn down. Nice business. Shame if it burned down. What you angry at me for? I'm just saying it would be a shame if your business burned down. This idea that, well, if I take the literal interpretation of the words, then it's not a threat, or it's not being a dick, then, I don't think you've understood how normal people communicate. Anyway, surprisingly, his avant-garde way of campaigning wasn't well received by the wider public. Anyway, so that's actually... And this, by the way, is why I hate this sort of anti-intellectual movement. The idea that we should elect idiots because we don't want those people who are better than us thinking that they know better than us, like doctors or car mechanics. I mean, you want decent, qualified people in these positions. The idea that you don't want someone who is smart is... I just don't know how this ever becomes a decent sales pitch. I mean, it's true that you don't want arrogant people, but the idea that no, you do absolutely want people who are better than you making these decisions, right? People who have the time to think about it. You do want qualified elite people. You don't, when you go to get an operation, you want someone who is qualified to do it. If you want someone to run government, you want someone who is qualified to do it. You don't want to end up like with the current Conservative government, where they piss away years of time, which they would have had to have organised Brexit, which was all have your cake and eat it pipe dreams, which were never realisable. And then you get people like Farage who emerge at the end of it and say, well, we voted to have our cake and eat it. Why haven't you delivered it? These politicians are just stalling. If I was in charge, we could have left the European Union and had all the benefits of being a member of it. I mean, it's just delusional. Anyway. So, tell me why you hate that below. And good luck, Carl.